This last weekend, I was lucky enough to get 2 full days dowsing with a night spent in the van. And I headed towards Kromeriz and the Archbishop's Castle and grounds, where I did quite a lot of dowsing to the south of the city to try to track some of the lines that I've been mapping recently, including the Templar line. Now, 2 positive lines run through the Archbishop's Palace, one on either side, which is not surprising because it seems like positive male lines do seem to like running through places of administration like castles and courts. The Church of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary is where the Templar line nodes, and other lines also cross there, probably another 2 Type 4 lines. I'd never managed to get inside before, this time I did, and very beautiful it is too. The original church on this location was built in the 13th century. However, several churches have existed here and burned down or been damaged by wars. This current version was built relatively recently. Another church that I found, dedicated to the Saints Cyril and Methodius, outside of the city centre, is a very strange one because it lies on a female line, which is highly unusual. Usually, churches dedicated to male saints lie on positive lines, and the only reason I can think of is that this is a very recent church built after World War II for the Orthodox Church, and perhaps this is why it breaks the rules. Anyway, it's a very beautiful building despite its relative recency. I spent most of the day in and around Kromeriz mapping the lines, and eventually got as far as preparing a map that looks like this one. Plainly there's still some gaps to fill and some work to be done there. Around 5 p.m. I set off for Rava, a beautiful valley close to Svarti Hostin, a very, very major node in Moravia of many, many Type 4 lines. I found a campsite by a stream and pitched my tent. Actually, no, this is my VW van, but it has a tent on top so you can stand up. And I had a very peaceful night and a really good night's sleep for the first time in the van. Very comfortable and very warm with the diesel heating on, and the noise of the stream just behind the van, I think, was responsible for putting me in a deep, deep sleep. Very comfortable bed, and you can also sleep upstairs if there are more people. Following morning, I went to visit the forest chapel. So I'm out at Prilepy, and I'm back at the chapel in the forest, dedicated to the Lady of Hostin, for the first time since I repaired the node here. And I must say that the node is still here, and as I sit here listening to the birds sing, I can hear the hum. It really is as if there were bees somewhere in the vicinity. But that hum, of one pitch or another, I have come to associate with nodes. I don't know if you can hear it. It truly is a magical spot. The humming sound, can you hear it? Butterflies in pairs and moths. Today with the sunshine, it's just absolutely beautiful spring day. And it just feels so amazing here. It's like peaceful and holy, if there is such a thing. While looking around and generally soaking in the energies and atmosphere, I found a treasure The treasure was hidden behind this stone. When you remove the stone, there's a hole, and in the hole there is a box, and in the box there's all kinds of little kiddie toys, along with a note on which people have placed their names and date that they found the treasure. See? Interesting. It also seemed as if someone had been there before me that very morning, compelled by the holiness and the atmosphere of the energies at the place. They'd left a little flower arrangement and a candle. It's funny, I just meant to stop by for 5 minutes on my way to do a longer hike up on top of the hill, but doing a different route to last time to see if I could pick up any new lines and figure out where the Templar goes from here. I just don't want to leave this place. I'd be quite happy to just sit here all day, to be honest. It just has that kind of an atmosphere. I guess I will leave in a minute though. Otherwise, I drove all this way just to sit here, which is not my intention. So my plan was to climb up the hill and to visit both the castle that I went to last time and another supposed castle a bit further along, taking some different routes to try to map both the Templar and the other line that I know follows this route. Along the way, of course, I took in some views, magnificent views on a beautiful spring day. And wandering through the forest on your own, on a day like today, you absolutely feel as if you're in a different world, in a different space, in a different place, in touch with the planet. And this is the hill fort that I visited last time, and I passed it by in both directions. The male line per run of the Templar alignment passes over and through that Hradisco and also to this second so-called Hrad, which I spent some time visiting after climbing up the hill. Now, whether in fact this was ever a castle is dubious. However, there are some natural rock formations at the top that make the climb well worthwhile. The history of the village of Prilepy is quite interesting because it was inhabited in the 7th century by the Slavs, essentially. And at some point, because of threats from the Hungarians, they retreated to the other Hradisco and abandoned the village, which didn't get restarted again until around the 11th, 12th century. And it was established there as a sort of fortified small enclosure, which eventually grew into the town of Prilepy. And every time it was threatened, the villagers left and went to the Hradisco, as opposed to this Hrad castle. On top I found a couple of fire pits, some semi-permanent wooden seating, and it seemed like occasionally people perhaps even camp at the top here and spend the night in the wilderness, albeit only about 6 kilometres away from the village. It's 560 metres high and quite a climb. The whole walk is a climb to this point and then back down the hill again. The outcrop is heavily weathered and it comprises a conglomerate with some very, very large pebbles and stones in a sort of grit or very coarse-grained sandstone. Quite a beautiful rock, actually. So I'm on a hilltop here with this beautiful weathered out conglomerate full of actually very large stones in the gritty sandstone matrix, and it's weathered out in some quite spectacular shapes. And this was once a castle. I'll do the research on it when I get back home and of course post it in this video, but it's on a male line which I suspect, although I'll have to check it later, is Perun. Perun also passes through the Radisco that's not so far away from here. Anyway, it's a beautiful afternoon. I'm going to take time to have a drink and some sandwich before heading onwards. Beautiful, eh? I mean, who wouldn't want to do this for a living? I wish I could. After climbing down off the hilltop, I took a different route back to the village of Prilepy through the forest, spending time occasionally just taking it all in because it was such a beautiful day. The cold wind spoiled it on top of the hill here, but once you got down into the forest, that wind was, you were sheltered, so the wind was gone. I took the time also to stand on a nearby hilltop and do like a 360, so you can see what this countryside looks like. This is typical Moravia, the country that I've fallen in love with. It's absolutely beautiful. And I spend a lot of time imagining what this place would have been like in the time of the Slavs, 1,000, 1,200 years ago, when the gods were real to the people who inhabited this landscape. As you'll notice, all of these areas have trails through and are all open access despite being forest and private property. In some instances, they still have to permit you access. Top of the hill, beautiful views. On the way down, I repassed by the Radisco, which is where the villagers would escape to in times of threat, where there really was some kind of fortified castle. Of course, what you don't get from my videos is that the entire time I'm doing these hikes and walks, I'm dowsing like this with one arm in front of me. It means that occasionally I dream of dowsing with one arm in front of me. And this is a female line, and look, somebody had basically painted a heart on the tree. Now, I actually suspect it's a marker for the path, which is the blue path, but why on the female line would they suddenly put a heart? Interesting, eh? And finally I made it back to the van. A nice cold drink from the fridge and a trip home awaited me, but I didn't go straight home. I spent a little bit more time in the countryside enjoying myself. And this is where I got to in terms of mapping the lines. Still a lot of work to do. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe and buy the book. Thank you.